We spoke earlier with David Begnaud, who is outside the couple's home.
This is Center Street in Redlands. It is the town nearby, San Bernardino. Down the street, it has been evacuated since last night, and that's because initially there was a concern that there might be some explosives in the area. The suspect lives inside an apartment. He lived there with his mother, his wife, and their 6-month-old daughter. I want to draw your attention down the street. Just in front of the police car, there is a dark-colored small sedan. You see the trunk is popped, the doors are open, and the hood is lifted. We're told around 1 o'clock this morning, a couple of officers who appeared to be SWAT officers walked up to the vehicle with a device, banged out the driver's door window, stepped back for a moment to wait and see if anything happened, and then they popped all the doors. Obviously, they have been checking for explosives in and around each area where they believe the suspect had some kind of dealing. Within the last 10 minutes, we're told that 6 vehicles, including that maroon SUV tactical vehicle down the street, they just arrived. We're told that is the FBI. They have made entrance into the apartment. You have local police, you have federal officials all on the scene here. The feds got involved pretty early on in this investigation, the FBI and the ATF, and local authorities have made it clear there is no motive at this point that they either know of or that they're willing to say yet, but they will say this: they are not ruling out terrorism as a possible motive. That's not to embellish, that's not to say this could be more than it is, but they're not yet ready to say it's definitely not terrorism.
David, you spoke to Saeed Farouk's brother-in-law. We saw him in your story there. He looked utterly stunned. What did he have to say to you?
Well, I did not speak directly to him. He spoke at a press conference, and it was interesting how we were actually able to get information from him. When the press conference was over, he went into a back room at the care center in Orange County. And at that point, we started passing questions where we were able to find out, okay, how exactly does the suspect know his wife? The LA Times is reporting this morning that the suspect went over to Saudi Arabia. He met his wife online, and then he brought her back to the United States. We were able to ask questions like, how long had they been married? He said 2 years. How old was the child? 6 months. We also found this out, according to the brother-in-law. Yesterday, both suspects dropped their daughter off at the mother's home. So again, the male they lived with the mother, right? Grandmother on the dad's side. They dropped the baby off at grandmother's house, and they apparently said they were going to the doctor. That's what the mother was told, according to the brother-in-law. And then the 2 parents disappeared. The shooting happened around 11 a.m. We got our first report at 11 a.m. that there was an active shooter situation in San Bernardino County, and it was well into the afternoon. I mean, we're almost talking probably 5 o'clock here, local time in California, that it was still going on. You might remember there was the pursuit, then the shootout, and then confirmation that both suspects are deceased. There was an initial report that there might be a 3rd person involved, but police made it clear right now they believe the 2 people deceased are the 2 people involved in the shooting.
And David, you're outside that Redlands townhome. We talked to a KNX radio reporter earlier, Pete Demetrio, who said that the authorities, when they went into the garage, it looked like an IED factory. What are you hearing about that?
We have not heard anything about that. There was a report initially yesterday after the shootout that followed the pursuit, that when officials were able to look into the back of that SUV after it was shot out, they saw what appeared to be some type of explosive device strapped to one of the suspects. As it pertains to the home, we have not heard anything specifically. But it's worth noting, I mean, this area, again, the entire street down to the light has been evacuated for the last 12 hours, more than 12 hours. Everyone has been told to leave, and initially it was the concern that there might be explosives in the area. That's why at 1:15 this morning, those 2 officers walked up to that SUV, and as it was described to me, there was a television photographer who witnessed it, and he said they walked up to the car and they had some type of device that they were going to ram the door with. They rammed it, and then they stepped back as if to see what was going to happen. And then after a couple of minutes, they popped open the doors, the trunk, the hood, and gave it a good glance over.
David, you were talking about reporters passing notes back and forth with Saeed Farouk's brother-in-law. I'm wondering in that dialogue, for lack of a better word, whether or not there was any mention of religion and faith.
No, I will tell you this. It was the LA Times that quoted someone as to say the suspect, the male suspect, had a deep religious faith, and religion was very important to him. The brother-in-law made it clear yesterday at the press conference that he didn't want to talk about questions about religion. Was he fanatic about religion? Was he deeply religious? Was he not into religion? It was interesting. I want to try and describe the brother-in-law's demeanor. He seemed like he had an obligation to be there to speak on behalf of the family. It is, I'll use the word a little strange. It doesn't happen very often when you have mass shootings like this, high-profile events, that a family member shows up at a news conference hours after the incident happened. But this man went to the care center that deals with American Muslim relations and said, I need to speak. I need to somewhat apologize on behalf of my family. And so that's what he did. He didn't take many questions at the podium, but back behind the scenes, as he met with his attorney for the first time, we were able to slip him notes, and he was confirming things. He confirmed the picture as to what the suspect looked like. He confirmed that the wife had been married for 2 years to the gentleman, and that they had a daughter who was 6 months old. We've tried to find the mother. At this point, we're not quite sure where grandmother and the little girl are. That's something we will try and find later today. And you also have to remember, there were hundreds of people in that area. You know, you have the people who were killed, you have the people who were injured, but then you have dozens, hundreds of people who were inside that facility who made it out alive. So the stories that we will hear over the next many days will be just as incredible as the ones we've heard over the last 12 hours.